Welcome, everybody, to the latest Street Badass live stream. We have a very exciting live stream today with legendary Martin Parr. So let me see if we can go ahead and find Danny here. Danny,
How you doing?
doing great. How about yourself, man?
Yeah, good, thank you. I haven't got my normal wine, cup of tea instead.
Well, you know what they say, it's noon somewhere.
Yeah, I did think about it, but no, a bit too early for me.
I've got a little coffee myself, so.
So you just got back last night?
Yeah. I was on a 12 and a half. I flew from Buenos Aires to Paris, 12 and a half hour flight. And typically those flights are a little bit cooler. So I had my vest on, I had my coat, I have everything, but it was boiling hot on that flight. So, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah. So yesterday managed to get to see Martin's documentary, which was really, really, really good. I loved it. Really showed his work really well, and there was so much information about his past work and all three his projects and his foundation. It was I'd really recommend to go and see it. There's still lots of places in London that you can go and see it, and I think you said in
Yeah,
Paris you can go
and
and see it.
speaking of places to see it, the documentary is called I Am Martin Parr, and you can actually see this documentary at the Nouvelle Odeon in Paris. It's showing today at 4:20, and then also it's playing at the Luxor. That's at 1 o'clock today. So those are a couple of places you can see it here in Paris. So
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. We'll see if we can get
so
Martin
let me
in.
find Martin here. Just waiting on Martin here. May want to send Martin a little
Yeah,
message. Here he is. Let me invite him in. You've been invited in, Martin.
perfect.
Hello.
Lovely to see you.
Hi.
Good morning, Martin.
Hi.
Hey, it's an honor to have you here. We appreciate you taking the time this morning to come on the live stream. And
Okay, no problem.
we've got uh, we've got coffee and tea going on over here. Danny usually has a little bit of wine. I'd imagine you're a tea guy.
uh, well, in the morning, coffee. After tea.
So you go, it's
Tea first.
tea, then coffee.
Exactly. You got it.
For me, it's the opposite. It's coffee, then it's tea. Hey,
Okay.
so what part of the world are you talking to us from this
In
morning, Martin?
Bristol. Yeah, in Bristol, in sunny southwest of of the UK.
Beautiful. Hey, so we appreciate you coming on here. You've got a huge body of work, and what we typically like to do is we like to hear about how you got your start. Now, I know that you were influenced greatly by your grandfather in
Sure.
photography. Could you tell us a little bit about how that went?
Well, I was brought up in Surrey, which is a sort of boring suburbs around London, and I used to go and stay with my grandfather, and he was a very keen amateur photographer. So he used to sort of give me a camera. We went out shooting together, processed film, made prints. So by about the age of 12 or 13, I decided that I wanted to be a photographer. I just thought this is the medium for me. I found it. I'm very lucky.
One of your first projects was Hebden Bridge, the black and white images that you took there, especially the image of the man on the stepladder in the doorway that I saw on the documentary yesterday. Do you think the Martin Parr of 2025 would shoot that project differently to the Martin Parr of
I,
1975?
I think it probably would be different now. I mean, people have often said to me, why don't you go back to Hebden Bridge? But I've no desire to do that. And I mean, the black and white ladder picture is just one of many hundreds that I took. and I probably concentrated more on the nonconformist chapels. That's my main subject. I wanted to try and, if you like, celebrate the kind of the kind of life that I witnessed with my grandfather in the north of England. So it had a sort of a dual motivation for me.
You also mentioned in the documentary that your mother and father were bird watchers. I couldn't help thinking of the similarities with street photography. We're also hunting the kingfisher, albeit the perfect shot.
Right, no, I know what you mean, yes. I
Do
mean,
you
that
feel that
whole
there was an
idea of
influence there?
collecting is something that runs through my career. Not only did I, back in those days, I used to collect things like fossils and bird pellets. And more recently, I've collected things like Saddam Hussein watches, and of course books. Books are a very important part of my life. I sold my whole collection to the Tate. I've built up another collection, which is housed in the foundation here in Bristol, and we must have 5,000 or 6,000 books now. It's still quite a lot, but not quite as many as I let the Tate take. So collecting in any shape or form, and photography is a form of collecting as well, as you sort of indicate. So there is a lot of overlap.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. Now, I notice for you, you do a lot of traveling, and beaches are one of the things that you like to go to. And I just recently, I flew in last night from Buenos Aires, and I read that your favorite beach is Mar del Plata. Can you tell us a little bit about how you found that place and what you like about Mar del Plata?
Well, I guess it's a huge resort. I mean, it must be, I think, the biggest resort in the world, in fact. And it's only really inhabited by people from Argentina. And if you meet anyone from there, they've inevitably been to Mar del Plata at some point in their lives. It's got 17 different beaches, 2,000 hotels, and you just get different type of beaches, have different atmosphere. Some are for young people, some are for older, and just the variety and the way they lay out on the beach is fantastic. And you don't really get any hassle photographing there. So yeah, it's a great place to take pictures. I've been twice, in fact, now, and loved it both times.
What's the name of the place there, just to follow up? What's the name of your favorite resort there? I think it
Yeah,
has a similarity to
no,
where you are
no,
right now.
Mar del Plata. Oh, right. So yes, the main beach there is called Bristol Beach, which means I'm living in Bristol now, so that always tickles me. It makes me think I'm coming back home.
Hey, I have one other follow-up question about Argentina. So when you're down in Argentina, is it media lunas or is it English breakfast in the morning?
No, you wouldn't get English breakfast in Buenos Aires or Mar del Plata. So I just have whatever's going, fruit, a croissant. They still have them there. So yeah, I mean, I usually shoot there very early in the morning because the light is beautiful and you still get people on the beach even by 8 o'clock.
Talking about beaches, in the early 80s, you switched permanently to colour photography. Your project, The Last Result, produced some of your most well-known images. You photographed the working class people of New Brighton in that project. Do you use a different technique when shooting on a beach to the street? Are you more discreet, more secretive?
It's a good question. I don't really know the answer to that because I think I'm pretty consistent, really. I mean, one thing that's interesting, when I did The Last Resort, I was photographing kids, and no one really thought anything about it. But if you photograph kids now, people get very suspicious. So the ability to shoot on the beach with more freedom has probably gone. If you see kids, it'd be crazy not to get permission from the parents to photograph them, or you just leave out kids entirely. So yeah, the times have changed from the early 80s when I did the Last Resort images. And in fact, I've been back to New Brighton for the film I've just been in last summer. And there you'll find that the place has really tied itself up. So one of the things that was very dominant when I was there shooting was the litter. And that litter is now gone. The beaches are cleaner. It's become more gentrified. So it's a very different New Brighton now to what it was back in the 80s.
So it's a new Brighton.
Exactly, yeah. Double New Brighton.
Hey, so speaking of your film, how did it feel to be in front of the camera instead of being behind the
uh,
camera?
well, this is not the first film that I've had shot on me. I've done a couple of quite big TV ones. So I guess I'm just used to it, really. I mean, I just go ahead. Lee Shulman's someone I trust and like. He's the director, so I just let him do whatever he wanted, really. So yeah, it was no problem.
Joining Magnum as an associate member provided quite a difficult time.
Well,
The vote
first
was
you
split.
become a nominee, by the way, for the
Okay,
sake
right.
of accuracy.
Did,
Sorry, carry
did you
on.
like? Did you like the fact that you were considered a controversial entry, or did you find the challenge to be accepted upsetting?
Um, well, remember there's controversy about the last resort images, especially when they went to London. So that was nothing particularly new. To become a nominee, which is the first level of membership, you need 50% of the votes. So yeah, I know that there was a very big argument about this. Many people were very against me. Many people were very for me. And in the end, when I became an associate, you need two-thirds majority vote. I've always squeezed in by one vote, and the same happened also when 2 years later I tried to become a member. I mean, in the end, I thought, the controversy doesn't do you any harm. If there's something that people really dislike, it means there's something quite interesting about the photographs. It's better to be, it's better to be controversial than ignored.
And you later became president, so.
Yeah, many years later, I became president. I did that for 3.5 years. It's really something all the photographers there are hoping that they will do if they're sort of capable of, basically being in charge of a situation. For some photographers, it's not really suitable, but for me, it was fine to do that, and it was an exciting time.
Hey, I've got a question here from Seishu Zakimi. Do you feel that the rise of social media has changed the essence of street photography?
I guess so. I mean, these days, of course, anyone can start posting their pictures on Instagram. And if you're a street photographer and you've got some half decent pictures, you will find followers. Followers always find these interesting people. So I think it's an important part now of how that whole scene operates. I mean, back in the day when I started, there was no social media, of course. So the only way you got yourselves known was by having exhibitions, maybe have some print sales. It's a very different time. So I think it's much easier now for photographers to be known. But the trouble is, there's so many of us that it's really hard to sort of stick your head above the cloud.
You did mention on that. You did mention. You said that photography is an obsession, and it really needs to be for any artist to be successful. How have you found? How have you found it difficult striking a balance between family life and photography?
Yeah, it's not easy, and I'm not the first person to find that. I mean, our daughter was born back in '86. That was just at the time that my career was taking off. I therefore meant I had to do quite a bit of travel, and it's only because I had a very supportive partner that I was able to combine the two things. So yeah, it's always difficult to do, but you can't let your feet off the accelerator. Otherwise, you're not. If you stop being obsessed, if you stop doing things, it's not going to work for you. You really need to keep that momentum up.
Did you ever have like a writer's block as such? Like just didn't want to pick up a camera. Have you ever had that in your career?
No, I've always wanted to go out and photograph because there's so much out there that hasn't been photographed that I want to photograph. I've never got a block. I just keep on going.
Interesting. Hey, I wanted to follow up with a question about having, I have children as well and family, and it is interesting what you said about the balance between family and shooting. Do your kids, or does your daughter rather, get sick of you trying to take pictures when she, because I know
Well,
my
when she
kids,
was
like
growing
they see
up,
me coming, they're like, oh no, no more, no
no,
more.
no, I didn't take that many pictures of her, but when she was growing up, of course I did. And I like some of these pictures. I've got pictures of her crying. That's unusual because most photographers don't photograph their children when they're crying. It's only when they're smiling. That's all part of the sort of cultural baggage of photography. Um, so yeah, now we have a grandson, and of course we photograph him as well. So yeah, it's inevitable that you do photograph your own family. I don't
How
particularly
old's your
use
grandson?
I don't particularly use these pictures. I think a few of them are loaded onto the Magnum site, but it's not my priority to use them. Oh, what's that?
How old is your grandson?
He's 2.
Oh, so you got a little while before he's going to pick up a camera.
Yeah. No, yes, he's not picking up a camera yet, but he's very entertaining.
I
2-year-olds
bet.
are pretty entertaining, so it's very fulfilling seeing him.
And also, he's not going to tell you not to take his photograph at this point. Not
Exactly.
at
Yeah.
2,
Yeah.
maybe at 3. We don't know.
Well, whoa. I don't think so, really.
You touched on your photo books earlier. You have been involved with 120 photo books. I myself are looking to make my first. What do you feel makes a great photo book?
Well, I'd say the first thing is some great photographs. And then, you've got to have a narrative, you've got to have a story running through it. And then you need to sort of pace that out and show it in the book so it makes sense. And the danger is many photographers, I'm not saying you're one of them, often publish their first book far too early when they haven't really resolved what they're trying to do. So, you've got to have something there that's very personal. It talks about your relationship to the subject matter, to the world out there, and what you're trying to say about it. And then, of course, once you've got those images, you need a good design to, echo and to make the book look classy. All these things are pretty difficult. So most of the books that get published, I would say, don't really work. And, I see a lot of them at the foundation. People send us books. I look at books when I go to a bookshop, and most of them are not very good. I mean,
So
so all
when
the people out there that you're talking to right now, it's very easy to make work. It's very easy to take photographs. I could do a book today if I wanted, but I know it wouldn't be very good because there's no particular theme or idea that I've resolved. So, you've got to basically, people are far too lazy. It's very easy to be lazy in photography. It's very easy to come up with a result, and the result really doesn't sort of basically work.
could you tell us a little bit about how you personally resolve what you want to do with a project?
Well, some people come to me with ideas. Sometimes I've got a big project that I've shot that I want to make into a book. I have different publishers. So for my mainstream books, I work with Phaidon, and then I work with anyone from Cafe Royal to Darry Lewis, other publishers for smaller books. So whenever it's right, I start talking to the editor and to the publisher and try to work out what we're trying to say, what we're trying to do, and the design to go with it.
Did I read that there's a 30% off your books at the moment with a certain publisher?
I don't know. It could
Yeah,
be.
yeah. I
You
can't
tell
remember the
me.
name of the publisher.
Oh, is it
Yeah,
Phaidon?
yeah. I read it on your
Oh,
foundation
right. There you
post.
go. So yeah, good time to buy books.
And
Um,
we had a question here in relation to projects from Martin Salter. When do you know a project is finished?
Well, some projects never finish. I mean, my two main subject matters, which are beaches and tourism, they just keep on going. Both of them had books out, and I keep on shooting those two ideas and projects. And then eventually I might bring another edition out where I can include some of the new pictures and keep the best of the old ones. Other than that, sometimes you have a project which is very short. It's often a commission. For example, I did a book about rhubarb, the rhubarb triangle up in the Yorkshire in the north of England. So there I shot for sort of 2 weeks of 2 weeks of 2 weeks, and then I knew that was it. I had to actually get out and start working out the book. So every project has a different momentum of a different time span.
I like.
So, speaking of beaches, I love the pictures that you've done on the beach, especially there's some I come from Florida, and so I spent a lot of time on the beach, and I think that there's a certain atmosphere there that you don't see anywhere else. What is it that you like about beaches that makes you go back over and over to shoot there?
Well, there's lots of people. They're all spaced out. There's nice gaps. You get real characters on the beach. So there's always work to be done. Beaches are very different around the world. So if you go to India, and I've done that many times, photograph the beaches there, all the women are fully dressed when they go into the sea. If you go to Brazil, for example, they've virtually got nothing on at all. So I like to show and explore these two different, or many different ways of approaching life on the beach.
You recently recovered from cancer.
I
Has
haven't
your
recovered,
recovery?
but it's ongoing. So I have
Sorry,
to correct you.
go on.
Yeah, I have myeloma, which you never get rid of, but I'm in remission from it. So
Sorry
It's
to
good
hear
to
that.
hear.
I want to be clear with the facts here.
Your, has that influenced your photography in any way, either thematically or in how you approach your projects physically?
I think it's made me realise, when people come out of cancer, they appreciate things like their family life, they appreciate the things around them. I also think, I'm 72 now, so I need to get a move on to, keep doing the work, try to improve it, try and make the archive better, particularly about the UK, which is I guess, my main priority now. So yeah, it's made me very serious about making sure every opportunity to shoot photographs I take up.
I've got a question from Barry Lewis.
Ooh,
Do you think
hello, Barry.
do you think the demands of fame can get in the way of the demands of being a photographer?
Well, I mean, I'm only famous in a very narrow bubble. The people like on this Zoom right now. I mean, although the film is out and quite a lot of people are seeing it, most people wouldn't know who I am at all. So I wouldn't call it real fame. I'd call it recognition within the photo bubble. And therefore, it doesn't really bother me. I mean, the only time I get spotted is if I'm out with a camera at an event, like a horse show or whatever, and people often then would come up to me and say, "Oh, hi, you must be Martin Parr." So it doesn't. So the price of fame is very small because I'm not that famous.
That was quite similar how I met you, because I remember putting my hands on top of your hands, which was really embarrassing, and saying, "You're Martin Parr."
That's right.
Quite...
You mean during Purim?
Yeah, during Purim. Yeah. Are you going to go again this year?
I'm not. I've just looked at the date when it's on, and I can't do it because I'm elsewhere.
Yeah.
And our daughters now moved from that road, so I don't naturally end up there in the way I did before.
Yeah.
Are you going? I'm sure you are.
I am going. Yeah. Obviously this project I'm doing in Canvey Island. A lot of the people, the Orthodox Jewish community, come from Stamford Hill, so I try and go down there every now and again. And Purim's just the best day for it. And it's on a Thursday this year, which is different. So for anyone that's watching that wants to go, it is down. It's usually the second day that they do, the more interesting events. But this time it's on the Thursday because Friday overlaps into Saturday, which is their Sabbath. So yeah, the Thursday is the day to go.
I mean,
So at
if you
this,
live in Canvey Island, do they have any Purim celebrations there?
Yeah, but it's much smaller. The community is quite big, but for some reason you don't really see a lot of the children running around, and I think a lot of the families actually go to Stamford Hill for Purim, so
Okay,
it's much smaller.
yeah.
So yeah, I tend to go up there.
Okay.
so we call him Danny Perim Jackson now because he shoots a lot of it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's a good sign because you need to shoot a lot to get the work. So, will you eventually do a book about the Jewish communities and, of course, feature Purim within that?
Yes. Yeah. That isn't the book I'm thinking of doing now. I'm thinking of doing the Eccentrics, which is a project on a portrait project on eccentric people. But
I hope they're
the
not smiling.
no smiles, no smiles.
Good,
I was
good.
told many years ago not to let anyone smile.
Yeah,
But yeah, that I'd like that to be a book at some point. But yeah, it's got a way to go yet. It's not quite there.
that's the right approach. Well done. Great.
Hey, so speaking of your work now, Martin, do you have a body of work that you would say is your favorite?
Well, I guess still the last resort. Even though it came out so many years ago, it's still my favorite. It's certainly the one we keep it in print. It's been reprinted about 6 times, and it still sells pretty well. So, yeah, if I get to the pearly gates and they ask me to get a book out, I'd probably still get that one out.
I actually looked at your last result book yesterday. I was in the Tate Modern, and we were having a look around. Do you think in galleries photography is represented enough?
Well, there's always space for more photography because I'm so pro photography. I mean, it's much better than it was when I first started. back in the day, in the 70s, there was like two photography galleries in the whole country, the Impressions and the Photographers Gallery, both of which are still going. But what you find now is, the Tate doing photography seriously. We've got the 80s show on at Tate Britain right now. And you get photography shows at the Whitechapel, at the Hayward. All the galleries there, do photography shows. So it's, the popularity of photography is much better than it was, back in the 70s when I started.
I saw an interesting one at Margate last week as well. Have you
The one
got
with Steve McQueen. Yeah, I just got the
Yeah,
catalogue.
yeah.
I mean, it looks a very good show, and it's great to have someone like Steve McQueen come in and take a slightly different angle than, say, a traditional photography curator.
Yeah, it was surprisingly good, and we went there just for the day. Really, we didn't know it was going to be on, so that was quite a result for me. And the kids loved it as well, which was I wasn't expecting. They walked around for about an hour, just were quite taken with the images. So yeah,
great.
And we have a question here from Caroline. When are you going to be in Paris again?
Well, I've definitely booked in for Paris Photo, and I'll be doing signings and that sort of stuff. I don't know yet. So at the moment, Paris Photo is the only time I'm definitely coming. Other than that, there probably will be times because I'm doing a big show at the Jeu de Paume next year. So I need to, probably go there to talk with the curator to continue working on that edit and to continue working on that show.
I've got a question here from JJ Waller. Beside the film and autobiography being published in September, do you have any other exciting world premieres coming up?
Well, hi, JJ. I mean, the project I'm doing with JJ is very exciting. It's in Brighton, where we're going to place his photographs and my photographs on the tops of bus shelters. So when you're in a bus, a double-decker bus, you can look down and see the images. So that's a new and novel way that I've never heard of before of actually exhibiting photographs. So that's going to be starting in April and May and part of the Brighton Festival. So it's a very exciting project, and I'd say completely unique. Don't
Yeah,
tell me
that's
someone
mad.
out there has actually done a project on bus shelter roofs. I'd be amazed, but you never know.
That sounds fantastic. Now, how do you stop the seagulls from spoiling the images?
Well, you just accept that. They're not there permanently. I guess seagull shit will just add to the the uniqueness of the project.
And we have a very slight gear question here. Are you still using the ring flash?
Yes. When I go out shooting, I usually take two cameras. I have a 5D loaded with the ring flash and a macro lens, and I have the other 5D with a 2470 on. And between those two cameras, that can cover basically all the viewpoints that I need. I occasionally take a telephoto lens as well, especially when I'm working on the beaches, because that's a very useful tool to have up your sleeve. So yes, that's my gear.
I noticed in your last result project on the beach, and that's why I said, are you quite discreet on how you take the pictures? When I was watching you in the documentary, you're quite upfront. You're quite obvious what you're doing. Whereas in the last result project, I feel like they didn't know you were there, or it came across that you got very close and there was no reaction to you at all. So it's more like quite discreet street. How did you shoot that? Were they just not bothered that you were taking shots of them?
More or less, yeah. I mean, first off, Scousers are very friendly. I'd often be talking to people. I'd be hanging around and waiting for the moment when no one's looking at you, because people get bored with looking at you after a while. So I exploit that. Other than that, it just happened. You can see the photographs. You can see I was quite close, but I've been even closer still when I started using the macro and the ring flash. I did a whole series of that on the beaches as well. Benidorm was a very good shoot that I did. So yeah, you know when to speak to people, and you know when you don't need to.
That really does come across in the documentary. The way you speak to people and the way you approach people, I think either compliments you give them and things like that. Has that developed over the years? Do you think you've got better at that, or do you think you've always just had that?
I suppose, I mean, I like people, I like talking to them, so it's just a sort of, would you call it a skill even, that I naturally have? You know, it's important that when it's required, that you do speak to people, and sometimes you don't need to, especially, say, when I'm doing tourism, because everyone's out there with their own little worlds. Nowadays, of course, they've got the smartphone, they want the picture of their family and everyone in front of the thing they've all come to see. And that's good for me because I can photograph their fronts and still have the monument or whatever it is in the background. So
It's
yeah, it's. But of course, as you know, there's a limit to how many photos of people taking photos on smartphones that you can actually have. You need to try and find something different as well. So it's I guess, you know, you just keep taking them, and hopefully you'll get better ones as you go on.
Hey, speaking of cell phones, we have a question here from Vlad Michenko. Martin, what do you think about iPhone photography? Does a photo become less important because it was taken on such an easy and fast way?
No, I think the iPhone cameras these days. I've got an iPhone 15, and you know, especially at night, it's probably better than basically shooting with a DSLR. So, and they're pretty sharp these days, and the ability to see in the dark is remarkable. So I often, well, I always have the phone with me, and often would use that and make that the primary pictures. I mean, I wouldn't be able to blow it up by a meter, which is what I do with many of my pictures when I'm selling big prints. But it would certainly be good for a reproduction, to go into a book, anything like that. They're no problem at all.
Your foundation is running an application for a bursary, and that ends tonight. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so we're very much encouraging the idea of helping photographers, giving them a start. So yes, we made 2 bursaries of 2.5 grand. And as you rightly say, you know, you can still put in today if you want. We're looking for photographers that are just at the beginning of their career. And of course, we'll be looking for people that show real sign of promise. And then if they need it or want it, we can mentor them as well and potentially give them a show at the end of that process. So one of the judges is Kavi Pujara, who was one of the winners of our last lot of bursaries that we gave. His work was terrific. We watched him over a period of maybe 2 years or so, and then we thought, wow, this guy's good, we're going to give him a show. So it's a very satisfactory process when that happens.
The foundation was found in 2014. What do you enjoy about helping and exhibiting British photographers?
Well, I'm a great believer in the quality of other British photographers, so it's been a fantastic opportunity for me to acquire their work and to present shows of them. And, you know, we've built up a good audience. We have good people now coming to see the shows. If you come to one of our openings, they're absolutely packed. And it's great to have this bridge to the photography community and the community in general. And, you know, it's all about encouraging and taking seriously other British photographers. And Irish, by the way. Don't forget the Irish.
So does it count if I have a British wife?
Yeah, no,
I'm
sorry. It
I'm
doesn't
gonna
count.
pass on that. All
If
right,
you
fair
live in,
enough.
where do you
I,
live, by the way?
I live in Paris.
Right, okay. So yeah. Well, if you are British, but you're American, aren't
That's
you?
correct.
Yeah. So sorry, you will never get a show with us. I
I'm
want to
out of
put it
luck.
out. Well, there's, you know, my friend Barksy here. You know, he has a good chance, especially if he gets some great Purim pictures.
Hey,
I
so
better get on
hey,
that.
what's we got a question here from Andrea Simon. What do you think about the younger generation using film a lot more than digital and the interest about it? That's a
It
great
always
question.
amuses me, really, because there is a bit of film snobbery. People think if they're shooting film, it's a more serious project. I mean, I think they're crazy because film is very expensive. We can make prints look as beautiful as any print that we've done through. You really wouldn't know the difference. If we often have shows with that I do of my work with both digital and analog, and you don't know the difference between them. So I think basically it's silly, but you know, I'm glad they're taking it seriously.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating. I went out with a load of young street photographers recently, and most of them were using film. and I was saying, I was running behind them. I didn't know that they were shooting film, and I could see that they were getting a shot, and it was quite an interesting shot. I said, "Oh, did you get the shot?" And they were like, "I don't know," and I was just blew my mind.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the time you really need it is when you're shooting at night, because one of the projects that is also ongoing for me is people dancing. And boy, my dancing pictures have improved dramatically since I've gone digital because I can control the ISO, the shutter speed, all these things, and I can get the best, combination of ambient light and flash, and it works for me. So yeah, I think that's where digital really is so much more superior in terms of its ability to get the pictures.
You know, one thing I love about digital is that I actually have some money left after I go and shoot for a week. Because, you know,
You have
I
you have a
come from the
weekly
film
allowance?
days. Well, it's like this. I came from the days of shooting in film, and there was like a little part of you every time you took that picture, you're like, oh, there goes a little bit of money, a little bit of money. Because especially if you're shooting a lot with digital, it's kind of freed you up.
Yeah. Well, uh, do you shoot now with film or digital?
No, no, digital.
Right. Okay. So, what do you think about all these youngsters shooting on film?
I I think it's kind of a niche, and I think that it's fine if they want to do it, but I'm with you. I think that digital looks great. And I think we're in kind of like a golden age of photography right now with the cameras that are out, with the iPhones, with the ability to take pictures and not have to spend a ton of money.
Yeah. No. Well, I can't disagree with you at all.
I've got an interesting question from Peter Dench. Um, why did you never learn to swim?
I mean, I did have an incident with the River Severn when I was maybe 10 or 11 or something like that, where I fell in it. And luckily, I was with my father, so he could just pull me out. That's always put me off. I guess I just don't like getting wet. I don't mind doing a shower when the water's hot, but the idea of, and my wife, she swims, all year round when it's like 3 degrees. I don't know how she does it, but she does do it. So yeah, that's a good question, Peter. And by the way, I did once get 50p from my granny because I sort of basically could do a few strokes, and I told her that I was swimming, and she gave me the 50p that she'd promised. I always feel a bit guilty about that.
Was your feet on the
But she's dead
under?
now, so I can't give it her back.
Were your feet on the ground in the swimming pool, and you were
Oh, I
just
can't
pretending?
remember the details, but probably, yeah.
Hey, we've got a question here from Zarin Yu from Shanghai. You do a lot of colored photos. What do you think about black and white photography?
I love it. I mean, the first 15 years of my own career was in black and white. And these days, I still see great projects shot in black and white. So yeah, I don't mind now whether they're in color or black and white. When color first came in as a documentary photography idea, people used to say color photographs by X, Y, or Z. Now, of course, people don't blink an eyelid when you do color, but I still have a great affection for black and white. And when I look back at my own black and white pictures, I still feel affectionate towards them.
Yeah, I'd recommend anyone to actually have a look at Martin's black and white work. I don't know, for me, it wasn't something I'd seen a lot of, and watching the documentary, it was actually really surprising how many amazing shots there were. There's really, really, really strong work.
Yeah, there's a book called The Nonconformists, which Aperture published. It's still in print, and that's basically got the best black and white pictures. And then also one called Early Works. We're just doing the second edition of that, which will be out next month, and that's entirely looking at the full remit of my black and white, work basically. So yeah, they're two good books to look at if anyone's interested. And don't forget, folks, by the way, we have a very good bookshop at the Parr Foundation. Many of our books are signed not only by me but other photographers, and we have basically a great team set up doing the shop. And yeah, have a look. It's on the Martin Parr Foundation site, and then you just go to shop. And there's over 100 books on there, and we got some books there. You'll find Trent Park's books in there, for example, all signed because we brought him over last year. So yeah, we've got some real classics there at quite good prices. Check it out. Plug,
Is the
plug, plug.
foundation open every day? Is it open just
No,
during the week?
it's open from Thursday to Sunday, so it's just opened 10 minutes ago. And even if you're there on Monday to Wednesday, ring the bell, and we'll always let people in. But basically, today it's open. We're open all weekend. The RPS does the same, so we try and join the same opening hours with them.
Funnily enough, my wife's brother lives in, is it the Glassworks or the
It
Glassworks?
works.
The Paintworks, that's it. And we went over there, and they're the days I went over there. So I went and looked on the Monday, and I went and looked on the Tuesday, and now I wish I'd rung the bell because it
Yeah,
was
you
just
should have done.
yeah, never mind.
Hey, we
Next
have a
time.
question here from Chetan Dodwad. I would love to hear Martin's view about AI in photography.
Yeah, I mean, people often ask me about this, and I don't feel particularly threatened by AI. I think it'll never be able to, replicate the individual quirks of a photographer, especially good photographers, where their quirks are the things that make people recognize their images. I've seen people do AI based on my pictures, and they're not at all good. So it will get better. Medically, of course, it's going to be a great thing because it can analyze results much quicker than the human scientists can. So yeah, I mean, people said the same about Photoshop when that came out, however many years ago that was, 15 years ago, whatever. And everyone said, "Oh, this is going to be the end of photography," but it wasn't. And AI will also not be the end of photography.
Have you ever been fooled by an AI image?
Not that I know. I mean, I've seen the work of people like Jonas Bendixson and the book he did, which is quite brilliant because he fooled a lot of people. But I may have been fooled. Who knows? I can't say categorically yes or no there.
I remember, is it Chinny Bolson produced a few AI images a few years ago, and they fooled a hell of a lot of people, and did fool me until you looked at them carefully, and then yeah, the
Sorry, I
birds had
lost you a
like
minute.
massive feet or something like that. There was
I think
some
that a lot of times
inconsistencies.
they'll end up having like this many fingers or something like that.
Yeah, at the moment, yeah.
Right.
Hey, we have a question here from Helen Teula. Who is your favorite French photographer?
Oh, right. Well, I mean, Cartier-Bresson was pretty good. Um, I mean, I love Sophie Calle, for example. I could think of many. I mean, the thing to do is to look at the 3 volumes we did on the history of photography books, and in there's sort of 200 in each edition. That's 600 books. So these are all books that I think are fantastic. So there's a lot of them, basically.
You've been all around the world. Are there certain places? Is there places that you've never been that you'd like to go still?
I would have liked to have gone to Iran. I applied twice to get a visa there, but they turned me down, and now it's too late. I can't travel as much now with my myeloma, and of course, you're very likely to be arrested if you're a Brit
Yeah.
in Iran. So that will never happen. Other than that, most of the places that I wanted to go to, I've actually been to. I've had a fantastic life, going to different places, photographing all around the world. But now I'm much happier to lead a quieter life, going to a few festivals in Europe and shooting in the UK.
Do you always take your wife with you when you go abroad?
No, sometimes she comes, sometimes she doesn't. I mean, she gets bored. I mean, she'll never listen to my talk because she's heard it so many times. So sometimes she go and have a nice dry white wine while I do the talk, and then we'll meet up afterwards.
Does she do any photography?
Yes, she has an iPhone and she does pictures. She has a Instagram account. So yes, she does, but not so many.
I've got a question here from Philip Penman. How do you find it breaking through the barrier with the gallery world? Are they as relevant nowadays? And what would you say is the main advantage to being in a gallery where photographers can have big careers in social media?
No, I still think it's important to have exhibitions as well as doing books. I'd probably choose books if you had to have one or the other. But photographic shows and photographic galleries are still important. And if you're lucky and you get selected to show there, that will give your work a great boost, and it'll mean it's a great opportunity to share your work with other people, not only photographers but the general audience that will come in. So yeah, I think they're still important, and most of them do folio reviews at some time. So I suggest that people who are interested should go and go and have folio reviews, get feedback on your work, see if people like it, and you'll find often they will show people that have come to them through a folio review. So it is important.
I'd imagine that's probably a lot different than the Instagram experience where you post a picture and everybody likes it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as you know, any good photographer will start to accumulate likes and exposure if you post good pictures. That someone out there will find you.
I thought it was interesting. I posted some pictures on TikTok, and the experience with dealing with just a general public as opposed to basically street photographers was a lot different, because they're
Right.
like, if you take my picture like that, I would punch you in the face, and this kind of stuff.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I'm
But
surprised you got so much aggro. You
I
sure you're not
did.
exaggerating it?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, no, I had a similar thing. I think photographers, if you've got an audience of street photographers, it's a lot different from having an audience which is the public. They have to be educated about what street photography is before they're sort of okay with the images, maybe.
You have to
But,
educate them pretty quick, Danny, to avoid that punch in the face.
yeah. Have you ever
But I
had
mean,
that,
they say,
Martin?
and I agree. Really, France is a more difficult place to take photographs. They're naturally very suspicious, the French, and of course, legally, the laws are in the favour of the subject rather than the photographer. So, have you had trouble shooting pictures in Paris?
It is more difficult, but I find the thing that helps in Paris is if you're completely and utterly open about, I'm taking pictures. I'm not hiding anything.
Hmm.
I'm not, if the more candid you are, I feel like that causes more problems. But
Hmm.
if you're completely out and open about, I'm taking pictures here, I got my flash out, I got my camera here, they'll come up and tell you if they don't want their picture on there.
Right.
They're like,
So
delete
there's
my
quite a
picture.
strong tradition of Americans living in Paris, isn't there? I mean, the Turnleys both live in Paris, and they're both American. Do you know them at all?
No, sir. It sounds like I should.
Yeah. Well, why not? Because they're pretty good photographers.
We're going to see you in Dublin next year. No, this year.
Correct. Yeah,
Is
I'm
it a
In
couple of
May.
looking
months'
forward
time?
to
Couple of
going to
months?
Dublin. Yeah. I mean, I'm told that the Street Photography Festival there is very good. I'm looking forward to going over. I haven't done a talk in Ireland for many, many years because when my Irish show was on at the gallery photography, that's when I was ill, so I couldn't go over. So I have great affection for Ireland. I spent 2 years living there. Have gone back repeatedly and taken new pictures, which all went into the new book I did on Ireland. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing
Are
you
you
there.
going over?
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm
we'll
doing a talk
both
there,
be there.
and we're going to do a photography walk, which I would imagine will just end up being a pub crawl.
I mean, I don't know how you can quite do it. How many people are on your photography walk?
I don't know, because
12, 10,
no,
2?
I think it's quite a lot. I think it's like up to 50 or
The
100.
last
They've put the
one we
No.
maximum.
did, we'll tell you this, Martin. The last one we did in London, I think, was 100 people.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
100 people.
But
We done that 2
are
years
you
ago.
trying to take serious pictures?
Sometimes I think for some people it's just like a social thing, getting to be able to chat to other photographers, see how they work.
Okay, right.
I did arrange a colour walk, which was quite interesting. So just outside the National Portrait Gallery, we had a load of colour walkers who are from Spitalfields Market, and they came down to have their picture taken. So sort of halfway through the walk, we had like a little sort of a portrait session,
Okay.
which was interesting. And then
Right.
some of them came with us, and then we all just ended up in a pub in the end.
Okay.
So it was
And then do you review the work later and look at it?
Um, well, we have like a Facebook group called the Badass Street Photography Group, and we had run a competition from photographs that people had taken in London.
Right.
I wondered if you knew when was the last street photography festival in London? Do you know?
I don't know, actually. I mean, I assume there is one. I've never been to a London street photography festival, funnily enough.
I've,
Well, I've been to many street photography festivals. You know, I went to, when did I go last year? Brussels had one. I went there. I did another one somewhere in Belgium. I've done one in Torino. I mean, I don't know how many street photography festivals there are, but they seem to be springing up everywhere. I mean, back in the day, you didn't have street photography festivals, you just had festivals. So this is a new thing. When do you think it's first started? Have you any idea when the first street photography festival took place? So I'm asking you the questions now.
uh, I couldn't say. I would imagine if it was to have started anywhere, maybe it would be New York, the first one, but I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, I did one in Florida, I think.
In
Yes.
Miami.
Yes, Miami Street Photography Festival. That was a long time ago, like 10 years ago.
So maybe they were the first one, but let me ask you this about the term street photography. Do you find that the term street photography instead of just documentary photographer has helped your career at all?
Hasn't really helped my career because I'm not really, I'm not out there photographing on the street all the time. You know, I would choose to do other things. I have many street pictures within my folio, but I don't regard myself as a street photographer. I think of myself as just a documentary photographer.
Maybe we should mention, Todd, that there is going to be a street photography festival in London this year.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
There is. So we're doing our first street photography festival in London on the 2nd of June. So it's the 31st of May to the 2nd of June, and it's going to be at the Regent's Park. There's a gallery in Regent's Park. Yeah, and we're going to have talks. We're going to have a photography walk and a competition running
Okay.
up till that.
And
So that's
what sort of work will be shown on the walls?
so there'll be 4 competitions: black and white, color street portraits, and animals. And each of those competitions will have 20 winners that will be shown on
Okay.
the walls, and then there'll be overall winners for them.
Right.
So yeah, there'll
Very
be more
good.
news on that in the coming days.
Nice.
But yeah,
Nice, good. Glad to hear that. It always tickles me because I'm always following Matt Stewart because people, if you're doing a street photography festival, he's the first person they invite, correct?
yeah. We wanted to get him on the show, so maybe we could give him a call out to come on the show.
I saw
To come
Matt
on
over in
to come on
Gothenburg.
an Instagram live stream, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
We'll call him out.
I saw Matt did a presentation in Gothenburg. I saw that was pretty good.
Hmm. No, he's a good photographer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was one of the first. Well, there was 2 inspirations. Once next to me on the screen just here, and the other was Matt Stewart for me. So that's how I got into photography in the first place.
There you go, good.
Hey, we have a question here from David Brevis. How did you approach making your first book? Did you feel any pressure with the first one being with it being the first book?
Well, the first book I did was Bad Weather, which came out in '82, and it had a support from the Arts Council. And you know, I met with the editor, who was Peter Turner. He's dead now, sadly. And it was no problem to work out the narrative. We got a good designer in, and of course, you know, when you first see that book, that's an exciting moment. And I'm still very excited when someone posts me the first copy of a new book, anyway. And if it's your first book, then it's something that really is a very memorable experience. And you know, I think all photographers want books because books, without doubt, are the best way to get the work across. You know, you can control your message, you can show the narrative, you can show what you've explored and hopefully resolved within that work. So, who doesn't want a book? They are expensive to produce these days, but of course, you can do a blurb book and see if it works in that context, and then hopefully find someone who'll publish it I mean, many of these publishers now will be asking you for money, which is sort of inevitable because if you're an unknown photographer, it is quite difficult to sort of break that market.
Hey, so speaking of books, how do you feel about zines as
Yeah,
opposed to
I
books?
like zines. I mean, the Cafe Royal ones are fantastic, for example. And it's amazing that Craig, basically publishes a a zine every week. It's quite remarkable what he's done. So yeah, I'm all for them.
Uh, Barry Lewis just produced a couple of those.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why Barry doesn't have a proper book of this early work, but we buy every single Cafe Royal book from Craig, so I haven't seen them yet, the Barry Lewis. But he was still a great photographer, and the work he did very early on in the 80s, 70s is pretty impressive. He's one of these
Yeah.
people that basically haven't got the recognition that he deserves.
I love his color work, especially the Butlins work. Really, you
Yeah,
did a project on Butlins as well, didn't you?
I worked at Butlins. I never did anything really substantial on the holiday camp. Not in the way that Barry did. He got in there and did a great project. We have that book. It's very good.
If you have a chance, I won't tell you the story here on the live stream, but if you talk to Barry, have him tell you about there's a story. He's got one of the best stories I've ever heard about somebody in New Orleans. Just
Okay.
ask him about that. Trust me, you'll not be sorry.
Thanks for the tip.
It's one of the best stories ever.
Maybe we'll try and bring it up and put it on our on a reel because
Yeah.
it was a good story.
Hey, so Martin, I want to thank you for coming on the live stream. We only get an hour on these, so we have to cut it
Okay.
off here. It's been an honor having you on.
Good. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing it. I really appreciate it. And the last the I Am Martin Parr documentary will be out in the pictures for a couple more weeks.
I think it's playing in 28 screens at the moment. So yeah, some of them will overlap into next week or start next week. But you saw it in Hackney, right? So it was playing in 7 screens in London last week. I don't know if it comes over next week. I just don't know.
And will it end up on a streaming service?
I guess eventually, yeah, yeah.
And here in Paris, it's playing at the Nouvelle Odeon, and at I had one other theater I can't remember right now. My apologies.
Okay.
But it's playing here in Paris today.
But it was on French TV. That's the big difference in France.
Oh, no kidding. I've been in
Yeah, no, it was played on
Argentina for a
February the
month,
14th.
so I haven't seen a whole lot of French TV.
Right. Okay. There you go.
You
All right. Hey, thanks so much, Mark.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Cheers,
It's been great
guys.
talking to you, man.
Yeah. Cheers.
Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.